The boy's first day of birth drew the Dragon King's soldiers because he was the sole heir of the dragon bloodline. Yet his fiery red hair was seen by villagers as a curse from the heavens. But in truth, the boy's past life was the last dragon in the world. His entire existence was almost dedicated to mending relations between humans and dragons. However, his tolerance only made humans grow more ruthless. After countless wars, I still could not escape the treachery of humans and died in agony. Before my death, I swore a venomous oath to the heavens: if there were a next life, I would annihilate every human who wronged me. When I opened my eyes, I realized I was tightly held by a human man. Confused, I thought I had been kidnapped by humans, so I spat at the man before me. But I was stunned, for my proud dragon's breath had become nothing more than spitting. This was a fact I had no choice but to accept. I had become the race I despised most. Yet since heaven gave me a chance at revenge, I vowed to return every pain I suffered in my past life. However, in the days that followed, no matter how badly I misbehaved, all I received were the bright smiles of my human parents. They always praised me with love, calling me a clever little rascal. By the time I turned 2, my increasingly crimson hair became a taboo among villagers. They believed it was a curse from the heavens, for red in human society symbolized cruelty and evil. But in truth, it was the blood of the red dragon manifesting in human form. And today was the day of the magician's trial. In this world, every child who reached the proper age could take part in the trial. My mother, Lily, was one of the rarest magicians. If I could learn the strongest magic and combine it with the red dragon's power sealed within me, my path of revenge would be much easier. After half a day's journey, I finally reached town with my mother Lily. By the time we arrived at Roland Academy, the trial ceremony was already near its end. When my name was called, Lily carried me to the testing platform. An elder in a mage's robe signaled me to place my hand on the crystal orb. If I had magical talent, the orb would glow, and the stronger the talent, the brighter its light. Hearing this, I couldn't wait to touch the orb. Since Lily was a magician, I was almost certain I could pass the trial. Yet in the very next moment, when my hands touched the orb, nothing happened. It didn't even flicker. Then a few cold words slipped from the elder's mouth: unfortunately, the crystal detected no magical talent within you. My rage soared, but all I could do was tug at his beard to vent my anger. Dragons were the first race to use magic, and I clearly had red dragon blood, so how could I not possess magic talent? On the way home that night, I seemed to understand: if the heavens wanted to punish me, they would not have given me reincarnation. This must be a test of my resolve for vengeance. So the next day, at the dining table, I told my father Mark I wanted to learn his swordsmanship. Beyond my mother's noble status, my father was also remarkable, once a famed sword saint who topped the sword rankings, defeating countless prodigies of his era. Under my father's patient guidance, I studied swordsmanship for 2.5 years. With the dragon's natural intelligence, I had mastered all his techniques, but the frail human body could not keep up with my mind. So I shifted my focus to physical training, for the Knight Academy entrance exam was approaching, and I needed to strengthen myself before then. One day, my father Mark handed me his long sword, which had followed him for many years. He said the Academy's exam used real blades, so adapting early would help me train my control. Then he led me to the family warehouse, where a humanoid wooden puppet stood. Mark explained it was infused with magic and was no simple opponent. Knight Academy itself used such puppets to train freshmen. Hearing this, I scoffed inwardly. It was just a wooden toy. Could it really be that strong? I rolled up my sleeves and readied my stance. In the next instant, the puppet mirrored my posture. As expected, my strike was easily blocked by its shield, and in a flash, it kicked the sword from my hands, shocking me with its speed. Truly, many human youths would not be its match. Mark chuckled behind me, saying he had used his connections to acquire this puppet. If I could defeat it head-on, the Academy exam would be no problem. With Mark's encouragement, I trained ceaselessly in combat skills outdoors. One day, a human girl wandered into my training ground. I gripped my sword cautiously, fearing a beast's approach, but it turned out she was only passing by. Her name was Emily. She saw me lying alone and came to warn that nightfall would bring monsters. Shockingly, she knew my name, but that wasn't strange. Over the past 4 years, my life had been smooth, and since my parents often slew beasts near the villagers respected them greatly and, by extension, treated me with kindness. Yet as I grew older, my striking red hair began to spark fear. In human society, red symbolized evil and power, so villagers often used tales of the red dragon to frighten children. The irony was bitter. Humans had exterminated the dragons, yet in their stories, dragons were painted as evil, while their acts of self-defense became proof of cruelty. As I pondered, Emily and I walked toward the village when 3 thin figures appeared before us. At their lead was Emily's brother Jared. He told her to stay away from me, claiming I was cursed by heaven and would bring disaster to all. He yanked her back, while a lackey beside him sneered in my ear, saying since I bore a curse, my parents must not have been good people either. Maybe they came to our village to wash away their sins. Rage clenched my fists, and in the next instant, I forced myself to call out to them. Then my fist. The head landed on the weakling's face. I told them not to interfere. I only wanted to deal with the one who insulted my parents. The strong boy stepped forward with a smile and said. He asked if I dared to spar with him. And he allowed me to use a weapon. Then he handed his longsword to someone nearby. And I also threw my longsword to the ground. Since it was a spar, it should be fair. As the flower fell, I clenched my fists and charged forward. But due to overtraining during the day. At that moment, I collapsed on the ground, exhausted. Seeing this, Jared's tone became rather mocking. He told me to recognize my own strength. And to go find something I was actually good at. Because I was not material to become a knight at all. When I returned home, Lily saw the injuries on my face. She thought I had fought with someone. I vaguely said. It happened accidentally during training. Even though I always held hatred toward humans. But the kindness of Lily and Nick toward me, I always kept it in my heart. I didn't want them to worry about me. If I couldn't even handle such a small matter, then I could forget about revenge. The next day came. As usual, I went outdoors for training. Yet I found Emily standing alone there. It seemed he had been waiting for a long time. Turns out, he had brought some wild fruits early to find me. He wanted to apologize for his family's rude behavior yesterday. At first, I wanted to reject him outright. After all, yesterday I was simply not as skilled as others. Besides, Emily was only trying to help me. He just spoke a little too bluntly. But seeing his tearful eyes, I sighed. My body moved on its own to take a fruit. Human society truly is troublesome. Handling these personal ties is truly a headache. From that day on, Emily would wait for me here every day. While I trained. Sometimes he would talk a lot nearby. Other times he would quietly sit and read a book. And I seemed to get used to such days. Meanwhile, on the other side, the town security troops appeared at my house. Their captain wanted my parents to assist in an investigation. After a detailed plan was given, Father decided to let Mother stay to take care of me. After all, it was just an investigation mission. He could handle it alone. At this time, I also finished my daily training. On my way back, I asked Emily if anyone had bullied him during this time. I worried that because of me, Emily might be dragged into trouble. But Emily only smiled and said, "What others do is their business. We just need to be ourselves." Suddenly, I recalled. My family had also told me similar words before. They told me to do what I was good at. In that instant, several blurred images flashed quickly in my mind. I held Emily's shoulder tightly and said thank you. "Emily, let's stop here today. Tomorrow, I will come to find you again." Then I returned to the warehouse at home. Found the magic puppet. Then I clenched the long sword tightly in my mouth. And crouched on all fours in a battle stance. At that moment, I regained the familiar feeling of the past. If I had to be myself again, that meant fighting in the posture of a dragon. Then I circled around the magic puppet. Again and again. Seizing the right moment, I leapt quickly. With a crack sound. Before the opponent could react, I successfully defeated it. Seeing this, I became very excited. Father once said, as long as one could defeat a level 1 magic puppet, one would definitely pass the knight's trial. But I wanted to test where my body's limits lay. So I adjusted the puppet's difficulty to level 2. The next day arrived. I saw Father Nick packing his luggage. It seemed he was going on a long trip. He turned and told me he had an important mission to complete. And he promised he would return before my exam. Then he hurriedly stood up. After telling Mother a few words, he left. I didn't have time to tell him that last night I had already conquered the level 1 magic puppet. But I still had to thank Emily first. If it weren't for his words, I wouldn't have found the solution so quickly. But who would have known? When I arrived at the place I had agreed to meet Emily, he was nowhere to be seen. I thought, perhaps he had something important to do. That was why he didn't come. Even though in my life, 3 unexpected people had appeared. They taught me many new emotions. And through them, I could feel the beautiful side of humanity. But I am a great red dragon warrior, bearing the heavy burden of my clan's revenge. I absolutely could not be swayed by these strange emotions anymore. The scene shifted. I had finished training and returned to the village marketplace. At that time, I saw Emily's parents. They stood anxiously before the weapon shop owner. And what the shop owner said, I heard every word clearly. Turns out, in the morning, Emily and his brother had come here to buy weapons. The reason was that they wanted to go into the forest to hunt beasts? I walked past them as if nothing happened. After all, if they were unfortunate enough to be killed by beasts, then I wouldn't have to dirty my own hands. But then I thought of the days spent with Emily. Instantly, a strange emotion surged into my heart. I felt a suffocating pressure in my chest. Even though I deeply hated humans. But someone as innocent and kind as Emily. He reminded me of a playmate from my past life. I could not stand by and watch him die. So, I turned and sprinted toward the forest. On a remote path inside, I smelled a bloody scent. Because of the dragon blood within me, I could easily tell. This was not blood from an adult. Therefore Emily was very likely ahead. Soon after, I saw the corpse of a demon wolf. It bore cuts from human blades. And the body was still warm. But the surrounding footprints were too chaotic. For a moment, I couldn't tell the exact direction. Suddenly, a familiar voice entered my ears. Without hesitation, I rushed toward the sound. Just as the adult demon wolf's jaws were about to fall, I appeared in time and stabbed my longsword into its upper jaw. Then I was sent flying by its enraged claw. I turned to look at Emily. By now, he likely had no strength left to escape. It seemed I could only draw this demon wolf away from here. So I clenched the longsword in my mouth again. My agile body moved like a dragon's shadow. But even at my fastest speed, this human body had reached its limit. It was impossible to fight an adult demon wolf before absolute strength. I was like a pitiful ant. If this were my previous life, even the leader of the demon wolf clan would not have the right to stand before me. The next moment, the demon wolf charged again with its gaping jaws. And I too lunged forward with all my strength. In the clash, I successfully gouged out one of its eyes. With its vision ruined, the demon wolf's following attacks became wild and reckless, which allowed me to spot openings. Then, I swung my sword repeatedly, severing its strong limbs. Having lost some mobility, the demon wolf went mad, opening its jaws, biting ferociously. But I showed no mercy, thrusting my blade, aiming straight for its fatal abdomen. The next moment, the dangerous creature finally collapsed. At this moment, I was exhausted, gasping for breath. Then, a flaming disc appeared before me. The next second, it formed a pop-up window. Congratulations, you have received a kill reward. A new ability has been unlocked, Blessing of the Dragon's Eye. And I obtained an ultimate beast crystal. The appearance of the pop-up surprised me, but more importantly, I needed to rescue Emily first. Otherwise, the constant bleeding would attract more beasts. And I thought, if I didn't save Jared, Emily might feel heartbroken. So, I carried Jared on my back too, though my limit was 2 people. The remaining 2 could only rely on fate. Luckily, after a few steps, I saw villagers coming to help search. Then I collapsed to the ground from exhaustion. At that moment, a villager saw I only brought out 2 children. Without asking anything, he grabbed my collar. He furiously demanded where his children were. Then, he slapped me hard across the face. More painful than the slap were his words. He believed everything happened because I had led the children into the forest. And the beasts had appeared because of my cursed red hair. Soon, other villagers who didn't know the truth surrounded me. They accused me harshly, blaming everything on me. At that moment, I felt only deep disappointment. Humans truly are a strange species. Just because of my red hair, they forgot I was just a child. When something happens, they only blame others, never questioning themselves. They often glorify themselves, which disgusted me. In their fury, one villager grabbed a torch and incited the crowd. He shouted that I was a freak cursed by heaven since birth. Today was the day that curse revealed itself. For the peace of the village, he declared he would burn me alive on behalf of everyone. He walked toward me with the torch in hand. By then, I had no strength left to dodge. I could only accept death at the hands of humans once more. Just then, a figure rushed in front of me, blocking the torch. After that, I blacked out. When I woke again, I saw my mother Lily asleep nearby, her face weary, tear stains still on her cheeks. When she saw me awake, she became overjoyed. After all, I had been lying in bed for over 10 days. From her, I learned it was Jared who explained everything to the villagers. Now Jared and Emily were fine, but the other 2 children were never found. If their mother had spent less time blaming me and more time searching, maybe they would still be alive. Lily stroked my head and gently said she was proud of me. She did not blame my recklessness but affirmed what I did. Then she left the room to prepare lunch. At that moment, I remembered the pop-up. I opened it again. As far as I knew, human books had no record of such things. Out of curiosity, I pressed the blessing of the dragon's eye. The next instant, I could see through walls. I saw Lily working busily, and the window showed she was in a state of fatigue and needed rest. I was shocked, because this was an ability I once had in my past life as a red dragon. Back then, I mastered nearly all magic in the world. Since failing the Magic Academy selection, I thought I'd never touch magic again. Yet now, it had returned in this form. It seemed if I completed certain tasks, I would gain new powers. While I was thinking about the beast crystal reward, Lily rushed in. She told me the house had suddenly caught fire. Then she used magic to pull me outside. With her ice spell, the flames were quickly extinguished. Using the dragon's eye, I found the culprit. It was Mrs. Grant, the mother of the 2 missing children. She wanted to use the incident to deepen the villagers' belief that I was cursed. Her actions only fueled my resolve to take revenge on humans. The next day, thanks to the dragon blood in me, my wounds healed quickly. I resumed my training, but not alone this time. Using the dragon's eye, I tracked low-level beasts at the forest's edge. They were perfect sparring partners. During this, I noticed that beast crystals dropped randomly. After killing more than 20 beasts, I only gained 1 beginner crystal. Then, when I targeted a direwolf, a window popped up for taming. Without hesitation, I pressed accept. The window said I had successfully tamed the wolf. What I didn't expect was that after taming, the beast merged into my body, waiting to be summoned. I also gained a new ability, beast taming. It seemed I could tame low-level monsters. Using the dragon's eye again, I searched and soon found the missing children's bodies in a cave. Their flesh had been stripped clean by beasts. I wrapped them in cloth, placed them in a barrel, and carried it out. At night, I opened the storage shed and brought the barrel to Mrs. Grant's house. When she opened the door, she saw her child's clothing laid out before her. Shocked, she rushed into the forest, chasing one clue after another. In the treetops, she found more of their clothes. Just then, I poured foul-smelling liquid over her from above and jumped down. When she saw me, terror froze her. She trembled uncontrollably, speechless with fear, while my slow steps crushed her spirit. The next morning, I returned to town. News of Mrs. Grant's death had spread. When the villagers saw me, they looked at me like a plague god. They whispered that it must be the curse upon me again. But I enjoyed the fear in their eyes. From the fear showing on her face, when I returned home, I found several horses parked outside the house. This made me feel a sense of unease inside. Sure enough, when I opened the door, I saw my mother holding my father's body, crying in pain. Father Nick's eyes looked pale, his face yellow, as if enduring immense suffering. When I used the dragon's eye ability, I could not detect the source of life. At that moment, the guard behind us told us that father had been bitten while on duty, protecting villagers, and unfortunately contracted a disease called phantom wing. Hearing this, my heart trembled. In my previous life, I had never heard of such a strange illness. Could it be that after my death, this world experienced events unknown to me? But I should have a way to heal father. Once, I had mastered an extremely powerful healing magic capable of dispelling all curses and diseases. But now, it seemed if I wanted to regain that magic, I would need to continuously hunt magical beasts to unlock rewards. The problem was, I was still too weak. Simply training in the forest every day could never help me grow fast enough. So I decided that tomorrow I would take the entrance test for the Alpha Knight Academy. Meanwhile, in the Mage Hall, silence filled the air. They had seen the future world inside the prophecy crystal. There were two possible outcomes. 1. All dark forces would vanish and the world would be reborn. 2. The world would be destroyed by an irreparable catastrophe. And no matter which outcome, it seemed tied to a red-haired boy. Therefore, they had already notified the main temples to find this boy as quickly as possible. If he turned out to be the savior, they would devote all resources to train him. But if he was the source of calamity, they would strangle him in the cradle. Soon, the next day arrived. I went early to the night examination square. Being a knight was one of the most popular professions in this world, so many residents came to watch the ceremony. Today's exam was overseen by the three most famous knights of the academy. Just as father had said, the entrance test officially began with a Tier 1 magic puppet. Many uninformed students underestimated it, thinking it was just an ordinary puppet, but most failed in the end. Seeing this, the examiners grew disappointed, feeling time was being wasted. Hearing this, I was shocked. Even from such a distance, I could clearly hear their words. It seemed after absorbing those beast scriptures, not only had my physical body become stronger, but even my senses had sharpened. At that moment, someone finally passed the test. It was Jared's older brother, Charlie. Right then, he gave me a thumbs up, and the examiners followed his gaze toward me. Their expressions grew heavy, as if they had found the very red-haired boy mentioned in the temple's urgent order. When it was my turn to take the test, one examiner approached the bearded knight who was leading. He told him he had found the red-haired boy, but he didn't believe in such nonsense prophecies. Unless I could truly pass the exam. With that, he increased the difficulty of the puppet to Tier 3. Staring at the charging puppet, I immediately noticed something odd. Its running speed was far beyond what a Tier 1 puppet could have. But I only smirked as I raised my sword. With a loud slash, the puppet shattered into pieces. I passed the test smoothly. Soon, it was the day I officially enrolled at Alpha Knight Academy. Before leaving, I stood by father's bed, whispering my farewell. But because of the phantom wing disease, he could not hear my voice. At that moment, my mother Lily came over with a necklace. She told me it was an heirloom passed down from my grandfather, said to bring luck to its wearer. Then I said goodbye to my mother and turned to begin my journey to Alpha. Before long, I reached the gathering place for new students. Because of the test's difficulty, only 2 of us from the village had passed, including me. The other, unfortunately, was Charlie. Since I saved him last time, he now acted overly polite whenever he saw me, which made me feel uneasy. After all, in my past life I had once thought about taking revenge on him. About 15 minutes later, Charlie finally broke the silence. Stammering, he apologized. He admitted he should not have held prejudice against me just because my hair was red, the color of a supposed curse. I calmly accepted his apology, since he had not truly harmed me, and the children who insulted my parents had already received their punishment. Then, from his words, I learned that Emily had gone to Roland Academy, a magic academy as famous as Alpha. At that moment, our caravan suddenly stopped. Curious, we pulled back the curtains and saw a thick mist ahead. From within, a lone figure staggered out, appearing injured, his voice weak. He claimed to be a member of the Shadow Guild. Today, while carrying out a mission, his team was attacked by a phantom beast. He was the only survivor, the rest of his team had perished. The bearded knight was shocked. After all, phantom beasts were said to have vanished for many years. Even when they did appear, they were only seen in remote, sparsely populated regions. Yet now, one had appeared in the forest near the town center. He calmly lifted the man and asked about his destination. The man said it was Rainy Town, and if convenient, they could take him along. Hearing this, I couldn't help voicing my confusion. Weren't we headed to Alpha Academy? Why Rainy Town, hundreds of kilometers away? The leading knight explained that Alpha Academy was the first fortress on the borderlands, where war could break out at any time. So, new knights usually trained in Rainy Town for 10 years until they fully mastered combat skills, then qualified to enter Alpha Academy for further study. Hearing this, my heart sank. For dragons, 10 years might pass in the blink of an eye, but for humans with such short lifespans, it was a long time. And my main reason for joining Alpha was to grow quickly and regain magic to heal father. Now, all I could do was hope father would survive this period. Just then, behind us, a beast claw glowing with purple light appeared. Relying on my sharpened senses, I quickly detected the danger. The knights soon noticed as well, ordering the guards to prepare for battle. Then, right before our eyes, several massive creatures appeared. Although phantom beasts had long vanished, some famous academies still kept records about them. The giant beast before us was clearly the king bear of the Phantom Beast clan. The next moment, both sides entered a fierce battle, and Uriah did not stand idle but chose to join in. Seeing this, the bearded knight cast us a look of praise. He told us to be careful, and if we faced an opponent we could not defeat, we should lure it toward him. As the battle grew more intense, the distant Phantom King Bear suddenly let out a sonic roar. The next instant, a terrifying aura surged toward us. I thrust my long sword into the ground just in time to barely stabilize my body. The next moment, the beast raised its left paw and pointed at us. Then a deep, heavy voice pierced into our ears, "You humans are doomed to fail and perish. Those beside you will also die with you." The bearded knight's face was full of shock. He was the most experienced knight present, yet he had never heard of a phantom beast speaking before. Moreover, its words sounded strange, as if spoken directly to one of us in particular. After saying these things, the king bear made no further move, but instead chose to leave. It seemed his only purpose today was to appear and deliver that message. Everyone let out a deep sigh of relief. If he had chosen to fight, the entire knight regiment might have perished here. But I fell into deep thought, for it felt as though the king bear's words were directed at me. At this moment, the knight commander changed his earlier attitude and praised the bravery of both me and Charlie in that critical moment. However, another knight with blonde hair still looked very displeased with me. He was the same knight Andrew who had increased the difficulty of my entrance exam. Soon, our group arrived at Rainy Town. By then, the border gates were heavily guarded. From the marks on the trees, it was clear this was the Amber Alert, the highest level of warning in the Kingdom of Aruba. The last time such a status was declared was during the height of the Phantom Beast rampage. At this point, the knight commander recalled the prophecy from the Mage Hall. He wondered if I truly was destined to become the hero who would save humanity or the one who would lead the world to its destruction. In the blink of an eye, 10 years passed at Alpha Muffin Academy in Rainy Town. At the moment, we were in class studying advanced knight theories. Unlike mages, knights could not cast spells. Instead, they mastered another power, called Qi. By cultivating Qi, they could strengthen their physical abilities, even temporarily breaking past their body's natural limits. But students could only begin training after turning 15, so their organs could endure the damage caused by Qi. However, I had already learned this from books back when I first entered the academy. So whenever there were theory classes, I would usually skip to train outdoors. One day, a knight troop appeared not far away, and leading them was the same commander who had escorted me here 10 years ago. He did not expect the first person he would see upon returning to be me. Considering how strict the city defenses were, the fact that I could sneak out silently proved my skills had become extraordinary. I told him that I had only recently found the chance to sneak out, since the Amber Alert in the Kingdom of Aruba had only just been lifted. Then Commander Griffin brought me good news. My father's condition had stabilized and showed no signs of worsening. They told me to focus on my training here and not worry about home. Hearing this, I was overjoyed, but soon guilt welled up inside me. For the past 10 years, in order to grow strong enough to cure my father, I had trained relentlessly day and night. Yet even so, I had not awakened a single new skill. Sensing my sorrow, Griffin suddenly pulled me into an embrace and encouraged me, saying my father would surely recover, and humanity would once again defeat the phantom beasts. Then I followed Commander Griffin to the town's central square, where all the freshmen of the branch academy had gathered. His aide, Lance, stepped onto the platform and loudly announced that tomorrow we would depart for the main campus of Alpha Muffin for deeper study. However, the entire journey would take nearly 10 days. To avoid accidents on the road, he warned us to strictly follow the night escort's orders and never act on our own, no matter what happened. The next day, we set off on our new journey. Many students were puzzled, since the academy had teleportation devices. Why then did we have to walk instead of using them to reach Alpha Muffin Academy? What they did not know was that this chosen route went through extremely dangerous swamplands. It was actually a preliminary test arranged by Alpha Muffin Academy. Moreover, the main campus had no teleportation devices at all, because it was located near the frontier city. If that city were to fall, phantom beasts could use the devices to reverse teleport directly into the heart of the Kingdom of Aruba. By dusk, the knights ordered us to help set up camp. While working, I used the chance to observe the guards' patrol routes. Later that night, relying on my memory, I skillfully avoided the watchman's eyes. The forest seemed full of powerful magical beasts. If I could successfully hunt them, I should be able to obtain many beast crystals. Just then, a hand suddenly reached from behind me. Turning around, I saw it was a class genius named Freya, said to be a direct descendant of a powerful family. He told me not to act recklessly, reminding me that this was not the outskirts of Rainy Town. I assured him there was no need to worry, these high-level magical beasts were no great threat to me. Then I turned and walked into the jungle. Naturally, the result was severe lack of sleep. Though the dark circles under my eyes looked scary, with this pace of growth, I could complete collecting all the beginner beast crystals before reaching Alpha Muffin Academy. The ring might even awaken a new magical skill. Days passed quickly as we continued the journey. Suddenly, Commander Griffin raised his hand to give a command, and the pace of the entire team visibly slowed. After passing through a particularly bumpy area, the sharp cry of a horse jolted me awake. A disgusting insect beast suddenly broke through the carriage. Charlie reacted first and swiftly severed its head as it lunged inside. For most students, this was their first real battle in the wild, and they froze in panic. But Charlie quickly showed his leadership as class monitor, decisively ordering everyone to evacuate at once, because these insect beasts always attacked in swarms. Stay inside the carriage, we can't move freely to fight. He told us to form groups of 3 in a back-to-back formation. Try to lure these insect beasts into the designated area. By now I was fully awake from sleep. Using the Dragon Eyes ability, I detected that all the insect beasts present were just low-level magical creatures. That meant I didn't need to get involved. And on the mountain above us stood 6 towering figures. It wasn't hard to guess they were knights from the order, watching this as a test for us freshmen. With them present, no accident was likely to happen. So I yawned and told Charlie to keep his fighting quieter, so he wouldn't disturb my sleep. At that moment, the knights observing couldn't help but show faint looks of appreciation, because among this batch of freshmen there were indeed a few worth cultivating. For example, the leaders Charlie and Freya, who were already far ahead of their peers in both skill and insight. Besides them, a few red-haired students also showed strong combat ability. As the insect swarm rapidly dwindled, the corpses of the fallen creatures slowly gathered into a new lifeform, a massive insect king. But under the combined effort of the freshmen, it was quickly destroyed. Naturally, everyone passed this hidden test. In fact, this was not only an entrance trial for the new students, but also a selection process for humanity's future heroes. Because of the prophecy, in recent years they had deliberately searched for red-haired youths. So besides me, there were several other red-haired students under special attention from the academy. Clearly, my actions this time had drawn suspicion from Commander Griffin. For a time, he believed I was the hero destined to save humanity. Although he hadn't officially met me over the past 10 years, he had learned through friends at the academy about my dedication to training and my extraordinary talent in study. Yet now it seemed I lacked the quality of unity that a true hero must have. After the battle ended, everyone returned to the carriages. They looked spirited, speaking with excitement, for it seemed they had passed the preliminary exam. If they were lucky, they might receive a white belt. This was the rule of all knight academies in the kingdom. During assessments, belts of different colors were awarded based on performance. The lowest was the red belt, and the highest was the white belt. The knights escorting us were all white belt holders. After graduating, such knights would be given the title of White Beast, the highest honor among knights. Furthermore, students who earned a white belt would receive special mentorship, one-on-one guidance, and rare resources. But a red belt was far less appealing. Though one could still train at the academy, there was practically no instructor guidance, and students had to rely on themselves. Hearing this, I felt like I was struck by lightning, for the red belt seemed perfectly made for me. In my previous life as a dragon, though my body was completely different from a human's, I could still create a suitable training plan. And without constant supervision from instructors, I would have more freedom to secretly hunt magical beasts in the wild. In the blink of an eye, we arrived at the legendary Alpha Muffin Academy. Soon after, we followed behind Knight Andrew to get familiar with every part of the campus. He told us that everyone here was a knight, because every graduate had to volunteer for 2.5 years of service at the academy before being allowed to take posts in other cities. Then we came before a tombstone, beside which stood 5 knight statues. Knight Andrew explained that this was the burial ground of knights who had died in war. The place was sacred and solemn, the most untouchable site in the entire academy. My face darkened as I looked, because the armor on these statues wasn't carved stone, but made from dragon body parts. At that moment, Andrew began introducing the identities of the 5 knights. They were the original founders of Alpha Muffin Academy, later honored with statues and the noble title of Dragon Knights. Just then, using Dragon Eye, I sensed living beings in the underground catacombs here. Yet this was supposed to be the resting place of fallen knights. Their presence gave me a strange feeling of familiarity. Afterward, I followed the freshmen to check our dorm rooms. Luckily, I was still assigned with Charlie. But unexpectedly, one of our roommates was a girl, the class genius Freya. It turned out Alpha Muffin Academy made no distinction between genders, all students were treated equally. The other roommates were familiar faces, mostly classmates from Rainy Town. At this moment, Freya sternly warned us not to enter the room because she was changing clothes inside. Then another roommate, Dan, strolled over casually. Charlie mischievously told him there was a huge rat inside the dorm, but none of us dared to deal with it. Before he could finish, Dan boldly grabbed a spiked club and charged in, saying it was just a little mouse, nothing to fear. Later, when we finished unpacking, we went to the dining hall. Dan now had a clear handprint on his face, glaring as he told us he had just learned some news. After dinner, the long-awaited freshman exam would begin. At that moment, a group of figures walked past us. Seeing how we were eating ravenously, they sneered openly, mocking us as country bumpkins who had never tasted good food. Then they came over to Ian, ridiculing his large build, before turning their insults toward the red-haired students, calling red hair a curse from heaven. You red-haired freaks better not run around the academy, spreading your filthy bad luck to us. Hearing this, the other red-haired youths grew restless, though Ian stayed calm and didn't resist. One of the bullies, a middle-parted boy, arrogantly said Ian should shave his head bald and tattoo "I am a red-haired freak" on his forehead. At that moment, I slammed a chicken leg into the boy's face, then pinned him hard against the table, twisting his arm until it snapped. I demanded that he apologize to Ian, or I would break his other arm as well. Seeing this, Charlie rushed forward to stop me, warning that all the knights were watching and that causing more trouble might affect my exam results. But I said I didn't care, because from the very beginning, I had already decided to get the lowest level red belt. So this freshman assessment for me is not important. At this moment, Knight Andrew also came behind me. He scolded me to immediately stop fighting. However, I acted as if I didn't hear and continued my actions. Then I mercilessly used all my strength to twist and break the middle-parted boy's other arm as well. I turned to Ian and said that trash without any real strength, just beat them once and they'll be honest. At this moment Andrew's anger had risen to the extreme. He called out my full name, questioning why I hadn't obeyed his order. But I just picked my ear and apologized to him, saying my ears had a problem, they usually only hear the words I want to hear. After dinner ended, Mayor Gray, who hadn't appeared for a long time, walked onto the platform. He raised his hand to signal everyone to be quiet. Then at the entrance appeared several figures in gray robes. They were the 6 elders of Alpha Muffin Academy, also the academy's nominal heads. Seeing this, I couldn't help but feel my heart tremble, because the aura they released was too powerful. It felt the same as those who killed me in my previous life. Then Commander Member began explaining on stage the contents of this assessment. As we thought, they would distribute different colored night belts based on the final results. This freshman assessment had 5 parts: the Strength Stone to test physical power, the Fiery Hell to test mental strength, the Silent Walk to test stealth, the Words of Precision to test insight, and finally the Will of Truth. The rules for the first test were very simple: just push a huge boulder to the target spot to complete it. But if you needed to rely on the power of the magic love, half of your points would be deducted. The examiner in charge of the first test was Knight Andrew. From the start, he told me he would disqualify me from the first assessment, because earlier I hadn't obeyed his orders. He said the first step to becoming a knight was to learn unconditional obedience to higher commands. And his order was for me to give up the first freshman test. Of course, if I could get Andrew's superior to cancel this order, he would also obey unconditionally. Hearing this, everyone felt injustice for me, because the earlier incident wasn't my fault. Andrew was clearly taking revenge. But I only folded my arms behind my head, relaxed, and told them to hurry and prepare for the first exam. After all, I only ever wanted to get the red belt. That way, I was almost 100% sure I'd achieve it. Charlie and the others performed outstandingly as expected, all passing the first test with full marks. Then came the second test, Fiery Hell. The one who exchanged with Andrew was an old man with white hair. The robe he wore clearly showed he was Mentor Lance from Roland Academy. This meant the second test was related to magical elements. If I guessed correctly, we were going to engage in magical confrontation. Generally, those who excelled physically would be weaker in magic endurance. So the better their first test results, the worse they might do in the second. Sure enough, the second test was to resist the illusion created by Lance. The longer you endured, the better your score. The first to go was Charlie. As expected, he only lasted 50 seconds under Lance's hand. But Freya performed unexpectedly well, managing to endure about 5 minutes in the illusion. This showed she clearly had impressive magical talent. When my name was called, I walked up calmly. Lance gently placed his left palm on my forehead. The next moment, I entered a dreamlike illusion. Then I saw a massive red dragon attacking me. It opened its wide mouth, about to swallow me whole. In less than 10 seconds, I failed to hold on and was thrown backward. Seeing this, the knights overseeing the test were shocked, because as I was flung back, Lance on the other side collapsed to the ground at the same time. When Commander Member rushed over, he found Lance unconscious. He then reported to the elders, saying Lance had fainted due to overexertion. Member forced an explanation, saying it was probably because Lance had tested too many students in a row. After all, Lance was one of Roland Academy's most capable mentors, and in all these years of testing freshmen this had never happened before. Meanwhile, one of the elders summoned a mysterious masked man. After whispering a few words into his ear, the black-clad figure immediately left. At that moment, the freshman had just completed the fourth test when suddenly it felt like an earthquake struck. Then countless huge trees grew around the examination grounds. On one treetop stood a young man dressed as an assassin. He introduced himself as Darius, examiner of the third test. What we had to do was follow him and imitate his movements as much as possible. The next second, he vanished without a sound. Seeing this, the students all rushed after him. But no one expected that the only one who could keep up with Darius was Monk, who had been utterly average in the first 2 tests. Turning and seeing someone able to follow without falling behind, Darius stopped holding back and sped up. As progress continued, I already felt myself struggling to keep up. Even though I had spent years training my body control, I still couldn't fully adapt to a human body. Compared to this, I preferred moving on 4 limbs. Just then, a hidden archer appeared, releasing countless arrows across the path of the exam. He turned out to be Lena, examiner of the 4th test. His arrival meant the 4th test would merge with the 3rd. The rules after merging changed slightly. While running, we had to shoot 3 arrows, and only hitting all 3 targets accurately would count as passing. And during this, Lena would create interference. Not long after the test began, suddenly another arrow shot from the shadows. Seeing this, I hurriedly shoved Charlie aside, but I had no time to dodge myself. I could only watch the arrow descending toward me. Luckily, at that moment another arrow shot from the other side, knocking it away. Then more arrows kept flying from ahead, making me feel a wave of pressure, because that previous arrow had carried. It was obvious that the arrow carried energy, but at this moment the one before our eyes was just an ordinary arrow. This meant someone wanted to use the exam as a chance to kill us. That was when Examiner Lena stepped out from the shadows, apologizing deeply, claiming the arrow had gone astray because he failed to control its strength. But I didn't believe his excuse, since the first arrow wasn't even his. There had to be a dangerous person mixed into the exam. Lena just wanted to comfort us and told us to finish the test first. Later, I shared my thoughts with Carrie and Freya, warning them to be cautious, since this person was clearly familiar with the exam's flow, possibly even a knight involved in it, or worse, an examiner. On the other side, Lena traced the arrow's trajectory and found a masked man, questioning why he attacked the candidates. The masked man gave no answer, only glancing back before they clashed. Before long, we passed the 4th trial smoothly and prepared for the last, which tested our willpower and mastery of aura. Knight Andre held a long sword, saying it was forged from the supreme essence of the Fire Emperor beast, releasing flames when wielded that reflected the wielder's aura. Ian went first, flames fierce but unstable, showing strong will but poor control. Gary did much better, balancing both fire's intensity and control perfectly. No surprise, Andre saved me for last. Some asked Gary about my strength, since I rarely joined group tasks in Rainy Town and my earlier exams were unremarkable. Gary, however, confidently said my strength far surpassed his, recalling that I killed a full-grown apex beast at age 5. Balodin laughed, calling it the biggest joke he'd ever heard, since a 5-year-old couldn't even enter the forest alone, much less slay a beast. Soon I stood on the platform, and when I touched the sword, the system spirit appeared visible only to me, offering to absorb a supreme beast crystal I had gained. Naturally, I absorbed it, and in that instant, the sword didn't release fire at all, its glow dimmed instead. Andre was stunned, since this sword was Alpha Academy's treasure, now no different from scrap metal. He grabbed my collar, demanding what I had done. I only waved him off, saying he saw everything himself and it was a divine weapon, what could I possibly do to it? A guard knight hurried over, whispering to Andre, which instantly made him drop the matter and declare the exam finished. He told us to return to our dorms and await results. After Andre left, my face darkened, because thanks to the crystal's boost, I heard what that knight whispered. Lena, the examiner of the third test, had been killed. In the Elder Council, they examined her body, finding she was killed in one blow, with the Academy's security never triggered, proof the killer was powerful and likely an insider, maybe even a knight. Little did they know, the black-cloaked man was sent by one of the elders. Soon the results day arrived. The head knight read the scores aloud. Gary was first, and everyone assumed he'd get the top white belt, given his excellent performance. But instead, Gray had awarded him a black belt, something unheard of. Ian and Freya each received white belts. Finally, my name was called. I too received a black belt, while our roommate Rocky got a red and another black. After the ceremony, the head knight told us training would start the next day, each group following the commander of their belt color. The next morning at the plaza, a tall, burly man approached, announcing himself as the instructor for the black belt trainees. Leading us away, he said we could simply call him K and we'd learn why later. Soon we entered a dark building, and suddenly he vanished so fast even my dragon I couldn't track him, reappearing behind us unnoticed. He declared this house would be our training ground, where we must master fighting in total darkness until we could turn it into our greatest weapon. Only then could we graduate. He then explained the Black Belt Knight's mission, an assassin-type order that only appears in wartime, tasked with assassination missions crucial to survival. That's why so few had even heard of the Black Belt before. It only reactivates when humanity faces extinction. Gary, disheartened, asked why, if we were knights, couldn't we fight openly like others? Kay clapped his shoulder firmly, answering with a powerful voice, if we want to fight openly, we can, but only after enduring this special training, when we will have gained the strength to do so. Since after all, the Black Belt does not fall within the scope of freshman strength rankings, the reason we were awarded the Black Belt was not determined by innate talent or power, but because there is something more special about us than others. Then he tossed each of us a watch, saying that with this we could freely fight until training ended and we returned to the dorm. Only then did I understand his final words. The watch recorded the wearer's real-time ranking within the academy. After each day's training, the ranking would be updated, and students of the same grade could challenge each other. If a lower-ranked student defeated a higher-ranked one, he would take that spot, and the higher the rank, the greater the resources gained. At that time, the highest rank belonged to Carrie, who held the top position among first years, while Rocky, despite not performing well in his assessment, was ranked 65th. As time passed, I gradually adapted to the brutal intensity of training, but upon returning to the dorm, I found Carrie and Rocky arguing over something trivial. Carrie thought the special training assigned by Kay was useless, since a knight should always fight honorably, while Rocky made great progress under that training and insisted it was crucial. At my suggestion, Rocky challenged Carrie to a ranking battle, news that quickly spread. Our roommate Max even formed a group around it, and by the day of the duel, many students came to watch, curious about the Black Belt Knight's training methods. At first, Carrie and Rocky's fight showed no clear dominance, but those with experience could see Rocky was on the offensive the whole time, though Carrie defended with ease. Rocky had improved greatly, forcing Carrie to get serious, but the fundamental gap still determined the outcome. As time went on, Carrie counterattacked, and Rocky struggled to cope. With one powerful strike, Carrie broke Rocky's sword, ending the match. Yet the next moment, Rocky, unwilling to accept defeat, unleashed his newly learned aura. Unable to control it, he grabbed a dagger and lunged at Carrie's back. Carrie had no chance to dodge, but the disaster never happened. I spoke coldly, Rocky, you've already betrayed the spirit of a knight. Rocky snapped back to his senses, apologizing sincerely to Carrie, explaining he had lost control of his sudden rage. But the result angered some students, since they had placed bets before the fight, each insisting their side had won. Max quickly declared the match void due to the incident and promised all wagers would be refunded, but the crowd didn't accept it. Seeing our red hair, they vented their anger on us, hurling stones and vile curses, stirring memories I least wish to recall. Just like in childhood, when I saved Carrie and her brother from near death in the forest, only to be scorned by villagers. Now again, after preventing disaster, they blamed me for ruining the duel, pinning everything on my red hair. Just as my emotions were about to explode, Knight Commander Gray intervened to stop the chaos. I misunderstood, thinking he had also bet on the fight, but he told me instead that my mother was waiting for me in the academy's reception hall. Forgetting everything else, I rushed over. Seeing her after so long filled me with clarity. Her visit meant my father's condition had improved. But she told me instead that he had already left the village. Those infected by shadow corruption usually only survived a few months, and for Nick to endure more than 10 years was unheard of. Yet even he could not resist forever and would eventually become one of the Shadow Clan, working for them as an enemy of mankind. A few days earlier, during a brief moment of clarity, my father had begged my mother to kill him, not wanting to be a pawn of the shadows, nor my enemy. When she refused, he wrote me a letter and quietly left the kingdom of Aruba. My mother came today to deliver his letter and to tell me she would go find him, determined to face this hardship with him. Back in the dorm, lying in bed, I recalled her words before leaving. She refused to let me follow, knowing I had my own destiny, even if she didn't know what it was. She understood it must be something important. Her words pierced me like thorns, making me feel like a useless person living this life. I had neither avenged the dragon clan of my past life nor protected those I wanted to protect in this one.